Welcome to the Korea Research Channel. Imagine the scene, if you will. It is 2026. A private jet touches down in South Korea, and out steps Jensen Huang, the CEO of Nvidia, wearing his signature black leather jacket.
Which is a visual I think we are all pretty accustomed to by now.
True, but here's the catch with this scenario. This is not a standard photo op. He is not there for a flashy product launch or like a victory lap. He is stepping off that plane because the entire global artificial intelligence boom has this hidden physical vulnerability. And South Korea just happens to be the absolute key to fixing it.
It really marks a massive shift. I mean, for the longest time, the public narrative around AI has been completely dominated by Silicon Valley. It has been this story about software, coding, large language models, and just the theoretical limits of machine learning.
Right.
But we are actively watching that era end. The AI revolution is moving out of the software labs of California and directly into the heavy physical industrial reality of Asia.
And before we get fully into how that is happening, if you're enjoying this deep dive so far and want to understand what is going on here, please take a quick second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. It really helps us out.
Absolutely.
So our mission for this deep dive is to unpack exactly why South Korea is becoming the indispensable infrastructure hub for the entire global AI ecosystem. Because when you look at how this technology actually works, you realize that, sure, Nvidia might design the world's most powerful AI chips, but those chips absolutely cannot run the future on their own.
They cannot. They desperately need immense physical support structures just to function at all.
Right. Think of it this way. Nvidia basically designs the world's most sophisticated high-performance engines. But an engine is totally useless if you do not have fuel. It is useless without a massive cooling system, expert mechanics, and a network of paved roads to actually drive on. South Korea is stepping up to provide all of those missing physical layers.
The overarching thesis here is that artificial intelligence is no longer just about graphics processing units, GPUs, and, clever chatbots. That is the old paradigm. The new paradigm relies heavily on high bandwidth memory, advanced semiconductor packaging, these sprawling physical structures known as AI factories, and a vital concept called sovereign AI. And for you listening, this matters directly to your daily life, because the products, the local services, the autonomous cars, and the consumer tech you will use in the near future depend entirely on this physical infrastructure being poured into concrete right now in Korea.
It is such a radical shift in perspective. And to really understand why NVIDIA's leadership needs Korea so badly, we first have to understand the single biggest physical bottleneck in AI today. It is a speed limit that, frankly, most people do not even know exists. We are talking about memory.
Exactly. Memory is essentially the hidden governor on the engine of artificial intelligence. We focus so much on the GPU, which, provides the actual computational brain power. But modern AI systems require enormous amounts of memory bandwidth.
Because it needs to process so much data.
Right. The GPU needs to be fed raw data constantly and at lightning speeds. If the memory is slow, your extremely expensive GPU just sits there idle, waiting for the data to arrive.
So it is like having a super genius locked in a room, ready to solve the mysteries of the universe, but you are forcing them to download all their research materials through a 1990s dial-up internet connection.
That is a perfect analogy. It is like dial-up, sure, but imagine you are paying that super genius $10,000 an hour to just sit there and listen to the modem screech.
Oh.
The financial waste is staggering. You are not just losing time, you are burning massive amounts of electricity just keeping the system powered on while it waits for the data.
Okay, so how do we fix the dial-up problem? Let us break down what that actually means on a physical level, because we hear terms like DRAM and HBM thrown around a lot.
So think of standard DRAM dynamic random access memory as a computer's short-term workbench. In older computer designs, memory chips were laid out flat on a green circuit board right next to the processor.
They're sitting side by side.
Exactly. But physical distance creates latency. Data literally takes time to travel across that board. So high bandwidth memory, or HBM, physically changes how this is built. Instead of laying memory chips out flat, HBM stacks multiple memory chips vertically, one on top of the other, kind of like floors in a skyscraper.
Oh, so like having an elevator shaft connecting all the floors.
Precisely like an elevator shaft. They punch microscopic vertical pathways, they are called, through silicon vias straight through the chips to connect them. This structural change allows massive lanes of data to move straight down into the processor at lightning speed, which virtually eliminates that waiting period.
And this is where Korea enters the chat in a massive, massive way.
Yeah.
Because Korean companies, specifically SK Hynix, have become the dominant force in this vertical stacking space. They are the key partners making sure NVIDIA's chips actually perform at their peak.
SK Hynix took a very aggressive, very early lead in HBM technology. Years ago, they recognized that as AI accelerators grew more powerful, the memory bottleneck would become the critical point of failure.
They saw it coming.
They did, and by mastering this incredibly delicate vertical stacking technology, they made themselves indispensable. Without SK Hynix's memory, NVIDIA's most advanced chips simply cannot reach their advertised speeds.
But wait, I have to push back a little here. We're talking about the Korean tech ecosystem, which inevitably brings up Samsung. But is not Samsung mostly known for smartphones, smart TVs, and refrigerators?
Mm-hmm.
How do they fit into this highly specialized, highly industrial world of frontier AI chips?
You are right that consumer electronics are their most visible face, but that really obscures their industrial reality. In the global semiconductor supply chain, Samsung's footprint is just staggering. They're a memory giant in their own right, and they're aggressively pushing their own next-generation HBM to win back market share from SK Hynix.
Okay, so they are competing in the skyscraper memory space too.
Yes, but beyond memory, they are also a major foundry player. That means they physically bake the raw silicon wafers from scratch. And perhaps most importantly, they do advanced semiconductor packaging.
Advanced packaging. What does it actually mean in this context? Because it sounds like putting things in cardboard boxes.
Right, it is a deceptive term. Packaging is actually the incredibly complex physical process of taking that skyscraper of HBM memory we just talked about and integrating it flawlessly with the NVIDIA GPU on a single microscopic board. It is essentially microscopic plumbing.
So they're not just making the parts, they're the ones gluing the whole system together so it can function.
Exactly. And this plays perfectly into NVIDIA's broader strategy. NVIDIA wants a robust, diversified supply chain. They do not want to rely entirely on just one memory supplier like SK Hynix or just one packaging facility in Taiwan.
That makes sense. You do not want all your eggs in one basket.
Exactly. They want options to keep costs competitive and to mitigate geopolitical risk. So when NVIDIA's CEO is meeting with Samsung leadership, it is not a courtesy call. It is about securing the literal architecture of AI hardware for the next decade.
But here is where the physics create a whole new set of problems. You take these hyper-fast GPUs, you stack memory chips right next to them to solve the speed limit, and suddenly you have a massive friction problem because speed creates heat.
A lot of heat.
You cannot just take these rigs and plug them into a standard corporate server closet. They run nuclear hot, they draw an absurd amount of power, and they require completely different networking infrastructure, which forces you to build entirely new physical structures.
Right. And that brings us to the rise of the AI factory. And we need to be clear here, AI factory sounds like a slick marketing metaphor, but it is a literal description of a new kind of heavy industrial facility.
How so?
Well, unlike a traditional factory that produces physical objects, like cars rolling off an assembly line, an AI factory produces intelligence.
Produces intelligence. That is a wild concept to wrap your head around. What does that actually look like on the ground?
It looks like heavy industry. An AI factory combines thousands of GPUs, miles and miles of specialized high-speed optical cables, and vast data storage pipelines. And because of that intense heat you mentioned, standard air conditioning does not work.
I would imagine not.
These facilities require advanced liquid cooling systems where fluid is pumped directly over the chips. The output of this factory is not a physical good. It is trained AI models, massive industrial simulations, and what we call digital twins.
I wanted to ask about that. How does a digital twin actually work, and how does it save a company money?
A digital twin is a perfect, millimeter-exact virtual replica of a physical system. SK Group, for example, is building these massive AI factories to run digital twins of their own operations.
Really?
Yes. Instead of spending millions of dollars mixing physical chemicals to find a better electric vehicle battery, they use the AI factory to simulate millions of chemical reactions virtually in seconds. They optimize the product digitally before spending a single dollar on raw materials.
It makes perfect sense why this is happening in Korea then. I mean, they already know how to build massive industrial facilities. They are legendary for it. They build some of the biggest cargo ships in the world. They manufacture millions of cars. They construct massive battery plants. Now, they are essentially taking that exact same ruthless industrial discipline, but they are swapping out raw steel for raw data.
And NVIDIA is betting heavily that Korea's historical legacy in traditional manufacturing translates seamlessly into the AI sector. Because the era of, a couple of guys coding an AI app in a garage is completely over.
Right. It is way beyond that now.
Producing frontier intelligence today requires pouring millions of tons of concrete, laying fiber optics across oceans, securing gigawatts of electricity from the power grid, and coordinating microscopic supply chains. The same country that physically built out the modern hardware world is now building the industrial intelligence that will run it.
But here is the fascinating twist. South Korea is not just building these massive AI factories to export intelligence to the West. They have a very powerful, very specific domestic reason for investing billions in this infrastructure. And that brings us to a concept reshaping global tech, which is sovereign AI.
Sovereign AI is the strategic idea that a nation must control its own artificial intelligence infrastructure, its own proprietary data, and its own foundational models.
So, independence, basically.
Exactly. A country wants its AI to reflect its own local culture, its own legal frameworks, and its own specific industries, rather than relying on a generic model hosted on servers halfway across the world.
I grasp the theory, but let me play devil's advocate for a second. Building a foundational AI model from scratch is unbelievably expensive. You need billions of dollars in compute power alone. Is it not incredibly redundant for a country the size of South Korea to build its own AI ecosystem? I mean, why not just license an existing massive model built in Silicon Valley and run it through a sophisticated translation layer?
That is a very common assumption, but it fundamentally misunderstands how language and culture work within a neural network. Translation software cannot bridge the gap of context-dependent meaning.
Give me an example of that.
Let us look at the Korean language specifically. It is incredibly complex and relies heavily on honorifics, social hierarchies, indirect speech, and emotional tones that are deeply embedded in corporate and social culture.
Meaning a direct translation might technically use the right words, but get the social dynamic completely wrong.
Exactly. An AI model trained primarily on English internet data and then just translated into Korean simply does not grasp those subtle nuances. Imagine you're using a generic model to automate corporate communications or handle customer service for a major Korean bank.
Oh, I see where this is going.
Right. If the translated AI uses the wrong honorific level when addressing a senior executive or a VIP client, it is not just a funny typo. It is a severe cultural insult that could legitimately kill a business deal. A native sovereign AI model does not make those cultural errors because the hierarchy is baked into its foundational training from day one.
And beyond just the language nuance, there's the data security aspect as well.
Precisely. Keeping sensitive data onshore is a critical matter of national security. No sovereign nation wants its proprietary medical records, its defense logistics, or its core financial data constantly being routed through foreign servers where they have zero legal jurisdiction.
Which explains why local companies are stepping up.
Yes, this is why domestic tech giants in Korea, like Naver and Kakao, are heavily involved in building this local ecosystem. Sovereign AI is not some anti-global isolationist move. It is a calculated strategy for digital independence.
And obviously, Nvidia benefits massively from this trend.
Nvidia absolutely loves the push for sovereign AI because every single time a country decides it needs its own independent AI ecosystem, they have to build the physical data centers to support it.
And they need to buy the hardware.
Exactly. And Nvidia gets to sell them the foundational infrastructure layer, the GPUs, the networking gear, the software platforms to power those domestic ambitions. Korea gets the cultural and data independence it wants, and Nvidia secures a massive state-backed customer base.
So we have the memory bottlenecks being solved by HBM, massive AI factories being constructed, and sovereign AI models being trained on local data. But all this localized, specialized intelligence naturally starts to leak out of the data centers. It does not just stay on a screen. It moves into the real physical world.
You're right, the next logical step.
And this ushers in the era of physical AI. But, when we talk about physically building out AI hardware in Asia, we have to address the geopolitical elephant in the room, which is Taiwan. Where does this leave Taiwan in NVIDIA's supply chain?
It is a crucial distinction to make. All of this heavy investment in Korea does not mean Korea is replacing Taiwan. Taiwan remains the absolute epicenter of advanced semiconductor manufacturing and systems assembly.
They are still essential.
Completely. Companies like TSMC, which fabricates the raw chips, and Foxconn, which physically assembles the server racks, are deeply embedded in NVIDIA's operations. Taiwan is not going anywhere.
So if we are trying to visualize this, if Taiwan is the foundry baking the raw silicon brain of the AI system, Korea is the one engineering the nervous system that connects it, the memory that feeds it, and the heavy-duty cooling system that keeps it from catching fire.
That is a much more accurate way to look at it. And it extends even further when we talk about physical AI. This is AI that actively interacts with the real-world robotics, smart automated factories, autonomous vehicles, and industrial sensors.
So moving out of the digital realm entirely.
Exactly. And this is where the broader Korean corporate ecosystem really shines. You have a giant like Hyundai bringing incredible expertise in mobility, autonomous driving, and advanced robotics to the table. And then you have LG providing deep knowledge in industrial sensors, high-capacity batteries, advanced displays, and massive industrial HVAC systems.
So when NVIDIA's leadership visits Korea, they are not just looking at memory chips. They are looking at the companies that will physically put those chips inside robots and cars.
That is the reality of the supply chain now. AI is simply too big, too expensive, and frankly too politically sensitive for any one single country to monopolize.
It takes a village, so to speak.
It does. It requires a multipolar supply chain to survive and scale. NVIDIA needs the software ecosystem and capital of the United States. It needs the advanced fabrication and assembly lines of Taiwan. And it needs the memory architecture, the physical AI manufacturing, and the sovereign infrastructure of South Korea. It is a globally distributed, mutually dependent machine.
That is incredible. And before we wrap up our thoughts on this, if you are a content creator, a script writer, or someone who puts together deep dives, blogs, or YouTube videos yourself, you know how hard it can be to organize all this complex information.
It really is a challenge to keep it all straight.
That is why we want to recommend a tool that makes the writing process so much smoother. It is called TextBrush. TextBrush is fantastic for writers and creators who need to quickly structure documents, research summaries, and long-form content without losing that natural flow. You can use TextBrush by visiting www.textbrush.app. It is a game changer for content creation.
Highly recommend checking it out.
All right, so bringing it all back to you, the listener, let us recap what Jensen Huang's future 2026 trip really represents. It is not just a business meeting. It is a snapshot of a multipolar AI world where the software we interact with relies entirely on immense physical components. The shift from generic, English-centric AI to highly specialized industrial and localized AI means your future is going to look very different. The autonomous car you might drive, the local AI services running your city's power grid, and the consumer tech in your home are going to be fundamentally shaped by the heavy infrastructure currently being laid down in Korea.
The boundary between the physical world and the digital world is essentially disappearing. They are fusing together inside these AI factories and memory fabrication plants.
Which leaves us with a final, slightly provocative thought to consider as we close out today. We have established that the future of artificial intelligence is not just about clever code. It requires massive, heavy industrial infrastructure. We're talking about AI factories, gigawatt power grids, specialized memory manufacturing, and immense physical supply chains.
The physical reality of it is staggering.
This has been Korea Research. Please do not forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more deep dives. Stay curious, and we will see you next time.